dialogue or negotiation is the way. Well, that seems to be the very progress. In a way, because there are certain reports, there is still no confirmation on that front. What's going to happen next? Talks or a total war, total breakdown of machinery, or there is going to be a ceasefire? Because now what is being said, as President Trump had also hinted, that there is an involvement of J.D. Vance, the vice president, when it comes to leading with the negotiations. And J.D. Vance is on standby, and he is now getting up for a meeting with the Iranian officials. As vice president seems to be jumping into this very sensitive negotiations with Iran if back-channel talks advance to a point of a direct meeting with the Iranian officials. So, Srinjoy, because, you know, there are diplomats, there are people, there are negotiators, there are stakeholders in play. But when J.D. Vance gets into the picture will then get changed.
First of all these discussions should ideally have been below radar. Now, once it's in the public domain, then it's much more difficult because your positions are already on the ground, laid out. If it were below radar, then they would be more fluid, and it would be easier to arrive at a conclusion. Now the Vice President of the United States is involved. Now it can mean two things. The first, if you look at it positively, is that at least some forward movement has taken place. And a result of this forward movement, the Vice President of the United States can come in and take it to a conclusion. That's looking at it in a positive way. The other way of looking at it is very simply this, that despite every effort, there has been no further movement, no forward movement. And if that is so, then the Vice President has to do his best. So both, we don't know which one it is, but because these statements are being made for the public, for the people of the countries concerned, for a variety of purposes, including information warfare, propaganda, and so on. But what's actually happening on the ground, what's actually happening in these back-channel negotiations, if there is some forward movement,
yes,
then it makes sense for Vice President Vance to enter.
Well,
and
because
then
President
take
Trump
it to
seems
a
to be
conclusion.
mentioning, you know, taking the name of J.D. Vance and also Steve Witkoff and saying that if, you know, negotiations are possible, then these will be the individuals or the people who will be leading the talks. But are there any talks happening in the first place? Because the coming less than 24 hours will actually get you the clarity or the real picture. Let's in the meantime also talk about how Iran is now preparing for this escalation, because Iran now seems to be appealing to its own people there that form a human chain if you want to protect your power plants, because those very power plants are Iran's lifeline. And it now seems to be calling out of people there that secure the power plants and form human chains. And this seems to be a message that is now coming in from the Iranian minister, asking the citizens, asking Iranians to form a human chain at the power plants if they want the power plants to survive. Well, that seems to be, you know, Rishabh, as far as this call that is now being made. Power plants, bridges, the very civilian infrastructure, the very lifeline of Iran, if it gets hit, well, when it comes to Iran, it seems to be now making a backup plan if what will happen and what it's now appealing to its citizens to do.
Well, one thing is clear, Iran is preparing for the worst, and they have been preparing for the worst for the last 1 year for that matter, and that's the reason they had been able to sustain the 39-day long war, which still continues and rages on. Now that the deadline is approaching, hardly 20 hours to the deadline that Donald Trump has given to open the Strait of Hormuz, Iran is preparing what happens after the deadline ends, which means that Iran is in no mood to back down or open the Strait of Hormuz, and that is something that is very clear. Iran, in reply to the deadline, has openly mocked Donald Trump on its social media platforms, and especially the way Iranian embassies worldwide, be it in Zimbabwe, South Africa, South Korea, or for that matter in Thailand, the way, or for that matter, when I saw from the consulate in Hyderabad as well, the way they have openly mocked Donald Trump is shows something different is cooking in Tehran, and Tehran is in no mood to back down. Now,
Absolutely, because
Tehran
now
is
it is seeking a surrender of the United States. I mean, this is a deadline versus another deadline that now seems to be given by Iran this time to the president and to the United States of America. As I said, the less, the coming time that what we are looking at, less than 24 hours to go, it's going to be exactly when we get to know the picture there, the clarity exactly what's going to happen next. Because one of the other participants in